Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for your grace, your mercy, all the gifts that you give us, the gift of salvation. Father, I lift the city government up to you. I lift the mayor, the alderman, the alder lady. Father, I lift this meeting up to you as they gather tonight and do the city's business and see about the city's business. I ask that you would give the wisdom that only you can give. And Father, I pray for the department heads and the city employees. I pray for the contractors that are working out on the roads as construction season ends. Father, your will be done in all of these situations. I pray for your guidance and your protection. And again, I pray for your wisdom. Father, may all that is done here tonight glorify your Son's name. And in his name I pray. Amen.
Call the meeting to order and begin with a pledge of allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On the agenda, there's no changes on the agenda, so I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda as printed.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as printed. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. Public input. Is there anybody got anything that's not on the agenda that they want to talk about? If not, we'll start with new business, and we'll start with number 1, substation number 3 repair, found on page 1.
I'll go get it.
Thanks, Will.
He was your toy.
Okay, yeah. So you just put that bid on there, right? Just this one? That's the only thing you got on the agenda? Okay. So, sub 3 is our first new sub, the one up north. It hasn't been, the tap changer on that sub hasn't been working for probably about a month. After research and troubleshooting and everything, we think we know what the problem is, but technically a tap changer like that, where it's basically new, it's supposed to be serviced within the first 5 years. Well, it's on 10, and so we need to service that, and then it also needs fixed. I could put the part in, probably 99.9% sure that that's the part would make it work, but at the same time, it's such a valuable piece of equipment that I just soon have a professional that deals with it come, put the part in, and then look that over and service it like it should be done. And then with that being said, he might be able to look at it and say, well, you won't need to service it for 20 years. I mean, basically, you just kind of gotta get a feel for how much it's been used. So anyways, that bid on there, that low guy on there, It doesn't happen very often, but he was very helpful, helped me troubleshoot it, and according to DGR, he actually is providing more, than the top one, than the Hitachi. That doesn't happen very often, so anyways, I would like to have you guys approve that I can get that tap changer, gone through, checked over, and fixed. Obviously, right now, we're not even using that substation, we're only on one substation right now for the city. I'm trying to, like to get that fixed before winter hits, so.
So forgive my ignorance, what are we talking about here?
So this tap changer, basically what it does is it changes, so depending on the voltage coming into the substation, into the transformer, or depending on the load that's coming out, that's what regulates your voltage.
Now, is that automatic or it is automatic?
It is, but it's locked out due to issues right now, yeah, so it hasn't changed for quite a while. But that automatically changes everything to keep the right voltage in your house working properly, so it's not too high or not too low. So, that's basically the most mechanical part of a substation is that's what moves, basically. So, but there's kinda like, how do you describe, like, kinda like brake pads on your car? The way it changes and goes to the different windings and whatnot, it's got touch all that stuff, and so it'd be nice to have that checked out and make sure there isn't
It's okay.
anything else wrong with it before we just go ahead and fire it up, or
This is-
hope that the one part is actually it, you know? Like I said, this is supposed to be done every 5 years according to DGR, and it's 10 years old right now.
Hasn't been done at all?
No.
In 10 years?
Nope.
And that's something he can get to fairly quickly?
Yes, and that's why we hurried up, put it on this agenda. That's also, the other reason I wanted to go, the guy that's cheaper, like I said, he actually, as soon as he gets the parts, he's gonna come here. The other company, ABB, middle to end of November before they said they could even come. So,
And so that substation, and unlike Jeff, forgive my ignorance here, that substation is not, it's not in use at this point?
no, I had
Would
to
it-
put
would it-
everybody on the other one.
Would it be in use if it was up and running? You'll be using them both?
Yeah, we always use them both.
Okay.
That way they're
And
not,
you could shove everybody onto that one you're gonna get fixed if something happens to that one?
yeah, but right now we're on
Right, okay.
that one because that one wouldn't change the voltage. I mean, there's some days that voltage was higher than it should have been, nothing that would have caused, but we were watching it and.
So it needs to be done,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's just, it was such a high amount of money that
right.
we needed to have this discussion, so make you guys aware. So, and we looked over the budget and everything, we're good this year, so.
If something would start burning there, it can burn up a lot more damage than that,
Right,
you know? Those transformers are
yeah.
big time money.
You need a motion then? I'll make a motion that Dustin, gets GTS Corp in here and gets this problem taken care of.
I will second that.
Okay, your motion would get GTS Corporation.
Yep.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to hire GTS Corporation to look into this and fix this, substation. Oh, what is it, number? Number 3. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, the same. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 2, building permits. Has everybody looked at the building permits?
Sitting right here, and I was listening to Dustin, sorry.
Dustin, does Pauline Beavers need a variance from sticking out too far?
That's the one over by the football field.
Yeah?
So, I didn't wheel it, but she's not gonna be sticking out any farther than her neighbor.
Okay, that's
So that's,
fine.
you look over to the east, then the neighbor's got the same deck deal, she won't be sticking out. any
Okay.
farther than that.
That's all we need. Thank you.
Has everybody looked at these now?
Yes.
Well, the paperwork's all in order, and they're all signed by the department heads. So I'd entertain a motion to either approve or reject, approve all of them, or we'll do them all at once. We'll first try approving them all. So I'm gonna ask for a motion to approve all the building permits.
We make a motion, we approve the building permits.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to approve the building permits. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Motion carried. The next thing on the agenda is a work session, and it's on annexation and utility rates for customers outside the city limits. I'll start this discussion on this a little bit, for a little bit. What we're looking at is if we supply the water or the electricity, we do not get anything, only just the rates. Now, just the water rates do not pay for all of the necessities that there is to keep the water going or the electricity. We get no tax money out of it. If we have a water main break, I'll use a water main break for instance. We get a water main break, we're responsible for fixing it, just like we are in town. If you get a water main break, it drains the water tower, and by the time you figure all the water loss and all the expense, it takes years to pay for that off the rates. So that's what we're looking at. It used to be that it cost double the hookup, and I don't remember when they changed that. If you lived outside the city limits, you paid double the hookup, plus you paid double the rates for. Cause when I used to live out here west of town, and I hooked on there, I had to pay double the rates and double the hookup. And I don't remember when that was changed, it's been quite a while ago. But that's what we're looking at, to discuss that, and there's each one of us has got a handout, well, it's up there on the screen. Comparing the rates now outside the city limits and inside the city limits. And this is comparing both water and electricity. So with that, Shayla, do you wanna elaborate on any of this?
These worksheets are just a starting point. It was just so we could kind of get an idea of what it would be. Currently, our rates for our electric are 0.843. Dustin, do you want these? Those are my copies. You have those? I have yours. Sorry. This is just one, I have two different houses, one's north of town and one's south of town. These are ones that are currently on our system. So they do have water, sewer, and electric in the north part of town, and water and electric on the south side of town. Right now we pay, say for electric is 843 or whatever per kilowatt. We just upped it to an even 12 cents, or no, upped it exactly 4 cents per kilowatt, I believe. So on the first one with the northwest of town, our rates are going up November 1st anyway, so the difference between November usage and if it was annexed, or if it's outside and not annexed, and we do an extra 4 cents per kilowatt, that's what our electric would go up to. And then our water would also go up. Same difference, I did half, instead of doubling our rates, I did half. So instead of $4, I went to $6 if you're outside of city limits, and calculated that out. So the difference between our new rates coming in November and basically if they were on Dakota Energy, they'd be a little bit cheaper right now. But that's because Dakota Energy has two different rates. They have a rate for June, July, and August, and they also have a rate for the rest of the year. So during the winter time, we'd be charging more. In the summertime, they would be charging more. So it kind of averages out at 12 cents. I think I don't know if I gave everybody that, but I do have the rates for Dakota Energy. This would be only if we're annexing in somebody that is outside of our service area. Just a kind of a rough idea, each month, what they would be a difference in their rates on this one. I didn't make any changes to the sewer, which really we should be making a change to the sewer because that's very expensive to install. You know, that's a lot more expensive to install. There aren't as many with the sewer as there is water and electric outside of city limits. So I didn't make any changes to that. If we wanted to go up just on the base fee by $2 or whatever, we could also do that. Like I said, just a starting point. If you get into the summertime, then our rates would be a little bit less than Dakota Energy. Now, Dakota Energy, if we do annex somebody that's in the Dakota Energy service area right now, for 7 years, we have to pay them 25% of the max of what we collect, of the gross of what we collect on that particular residence, so we'd have to keep track of that, if we did annex that in, so that would be an additional cost. But if we're just talking annex, starting with where we already do all of the utilities, annexation also comes with other costs as far as streets, lights, snow removal, maintaining the streets, that type of thing. Looking at the taxes on this particular house, if they were to move into the city, it would be an extra $16.65 a year for their taxes based on their township taxes. And looking at their utilities, it would be very similar, if we did it this way. Obviously, like I said, this is a starting point. We can go higher, we can go lower. And then I gave everybody a list of all of the commercial and residential people outside the city limits. I have a list of those. I didn't wanna put those up here because I don't really want names out of the people that it would affect. So I'm open to suggestions of where you'd like us to go from here.
So you said we have very few on the sewer?
On the sewer, was anybody north? I wish Terry was in here. North, like, none of them are on sewer. Anybody on the other side of the river, the creek is not on sewer, and anybody south of the tracks, like going towards the 4-H grounds, they're not on sewer. They all have septic systems. Our ordinances do allow us to annex them in and not provide sewer if it's currently that way, that they have a septic system. Same way with Meadow Heights, they have a septic system up there, up by Rogers End's area. That's all septic system up there.
The cost of putting in sewer we could never get our fees high enough to cover that. So I didn't see a list here, so that's why I asked. I didn't know how many people we had.
I didn't think to have,
Well, part of the annexing in, I mean, that's all part of, we wanna clean up our boundaries anyway. And
right,
so there are a number of those up near the park on the other side of the creek, as you were speaking. I mean, we do street maintenance up there as well?
some of the streets, yes, there's like up past the park, that is, we maintain that one. Second Street, we maintain all the way out to the section line. 5th Street, I believe, we go out past Rombo's, and it's kind of on the edge, just on the other side of the creek. So there's a couple streets that already are sticking out, per se, that we maintain the street, and we don't have anything on either side that we get for property tax on that.
So there are some houses that are getting their streets maintained, they are on city utilities, and they are completely outside of.
Well, Second Street here going west, there's nothing you can do about that because Second Street actually belongs to the city. If you look back far enough, you'll find out that back in 1915 or somewhere in there, that was taken off of the land out there because it was on my abstract when I lived out there, and it was donated to the city for use for public transportation, and if the city quits maintaining them, it goes back to the landowner. And I don't know about the one up there, I think there might be something to do with 5th Street too, something about, we'd have to look. up at the courthouse at the Register of Deeds office, because I think there might be something up there, something about that cemetery, but I'm not sure. It just seems to me like there was, but I know this one here belongs to 'em.
So is this something that we'd have to do all at once? Or can we divide this up to those people who are right on the immediate boundaries of the city that should be taken care of, that we are already providing full services to? Can we do those first and then look at some of the other outliers? Is it something, I mean, I don't know what everybody else thinks, is it something that should be done all at once? Because if we do the real close ones that are just on the boundaries, I think we ought to be, don't we wanna redraw those boundaries and get the annexation done with those? I mean,
That's kind of our goal,
to clean up those boundaries anyway.
and Ann coming in gives me, we also would have to change our zoning so that if we're currently ag, they would be able to stay ag. If we annex somebody and if they're currently ag, they should be able to keep their horses or livestock, because we don't wanna mess that up. I mean, they're there because of their livestock or whatever. So we'd have to add another zoning to within the city and grandfather anyone in that is currently ag, I would think.
Annie, you have a question?
Can I comment on that?
Yeah.
Sorry I'm late, I was at another meeting. If you're talking about annexing me in, one of my biggest concerns is if I'm grandfathered in agriculture. If I'm zoned in and people, if I ever decide to sell, as soon as I'm zoned into town and whoever buys from me can't stay that way, I lose all my resale value.
No, that property would be zoned ag.
It would stay,
That's the way I would see it, is that area would be zoned. You're currently ag, basically, that property would stay that way.
Okay.
Unless the person that bought it wanted to change that.
the other question I had for you is, what's in it for me? I mean, I'm gonna be honest, I have a $350,000 house out there. I have my own septic tank, and when you tore up my road this summer, you didn't put in a lift station to hook me up to city sewer. And I don't stand anything to benefit from it except for an increase in property taxes. I mean, I will honestly truly fight this tooth and nail to be annexed in, because all it's doing is jacking up my property taxes on a 6-year-old house.
Do you have city electric?
I do, I have city electric and city water, but when I built that house, I was also told that because I was already hooked up there, I didn't have the choice to go to Mid-Dakota or to Dakota Energy. I had to stay with city because that was what was there. And I also know that Chris and Marcy at the end of the road had been fighting with Bill. They had talked at one point in time about building a new house out there, and they were fighting with Bill because they're already hooked up to city water and electric, trying to get off of there to get onto Dakota Energy. And they've been fighting tooth and nail for it. And so, I mean, in all honesty, annexing me into the city doesn't do anything except jack up my property taxes. And maybe that was discussed before I got here, so I apologize for being late, but.
And the city maintains the road going by. And so, of course, the whole thing is that it would, if we annexed you in, it would raise your property taxes, just like everybody else in town who is sharing in having their streets cleaned and having, city water to pay for the city, help maintain our system, and city electric. And
But
so
I already pay those surcharges, I already pay that surcharge for the water and electric, just like everybody else does. City Limits also stops on the other side of the road, they stop at Iverson's driveway. On their side of the road is where City Limits stops. My side of the road is at the bridge. And so I said something when the township was meeting this spring, because my road was nothing but a washboard all the way to the end of my driveway. I said something to the township about it, and they said, well, that's, the city maintains that. And I've kind of gotten the argument both sides, that the city maintains it, but the township doesn't argue with it because you do, but you do it out of the goodness of your heart. So it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other as far as maintaining that road. I mean, I don't think firm ownership all the way out to 12th Avenue has been established in who's in charge of it either, have they?
What Ron was just discussing? Is that what Ron was just discussing?
Yeah, exactly.
I think there's a little bit of confusion on surcharges and what would happen if we had to, since we supply electric, we supply water, and correct me if I'm wrong. But if something happens, that the surcharges are part of the updating and upgrading of the system that we all have in town, that we're all helping to pay for. The surcharges really wouldn't help if there was a major breakage in your line or something happened and the city had to put a bunch of money into that. So the surcharges they're not really in effect as far as some big outage or damage that we would have to go in and repair if a line burst and something else happened. That's where a little bit of additional city tax, if you were annexed in, and again, this is just talk, we haven't decided anything yet, but that's where it's probably not really fair for the rest of the city, because everybody else is then helping to pay for something that you are not paying for through your taxes, through being the city taxes.
Then I guess my question is, why did you go ahead and hook Les Larson's property up to city water and upgrade that whole road this summer prior, prior to being annexed in? You just took that upon yourself to do that because, and I understand doing it while you're there and taking advantage of the crew being there, I understand that, but I didn't ask to be upgraded. I mean, you know, if you were going to do that, I should have been already a part of the city, or I should have had the option and to not be hooked up, to have my services disconnected and be able to get Mid-Dakota trenched in there. I mean, that's, part of that is, I mean, that's kind of how I see that, a response to that. I'm not trying to rebuke everything you say, Bob, by any stretch of the imagination, but, I mean, what was the point in hooking Les up out there a couple of years ago versus letting him get Mid-Dakota trenched in as well?
Well, I do know that Mid-Dakota was not taking any extra customers for a while there, and I don't know if they are yet or not. But they wouldn't take anyone that wanted to be, because they didn't have any capability of adding more services on. So that wouldn't have been an option for him to go to Mid-Dakota.
Okay, and I can tell you, as somebody who has put in a whole lot of Mid-Dakota water, it would have cost you a boatload of money. You would have never recouped any kind of cost from being part of city water if you would have had to pay personally, which you would have had to done to have Mid-Dakota piped in for you. It is incredibly expensive.
I'm sure, I mean, but,
And
But like I
for
said-
you and Les both, I mean,
Yeah.
for the city to go out and improve that was a huge bonus to you, because it saved you a whole lot of money.
but again, I didn't ask for it either. And when I did build my house, it did cost me an extra lot of money because we couldn't find the water main. And I had to trench in a whole new, lines, I had to put in 300 feet of water lines, because when I did try and get hooked up to the water main, nobody knew where the water main was. And I don't know honestly if those water upgrades are gonna be worth the property taxes that I pay. I mean, that's some numbers we'd have to see too.
Well, historically, the amount of water main breaks and sewer in basements is huge compared, I mean, we don't have that anymore. So being without water for a long period of time because we have water main breaks that have to shut down a big part of town, and having sewer in basements, that's what we were trying to avoid and what we have been able to avoid. And fortunately, we lucked out big time with our interest rates and our grants. We were so lucky we started when we did, rather than every other town in the state that's starting, and now they're not gonna get near the benefit that we did.
Do you have an estimate on what one cost of a water main break was? Do you remember what one of them was? Cause I remember it being like $60,000-$70,000 for just like one break that lasted like, 12 hours.
Right.
I mean, I just remember that. Do you remember?
The water main breaks were mainly before I started here, but looking at their history, yeah, they were up between 60 and 70,000 every time we had a water main break around town.
And I remember that one that was up by Fields. They had that, what was that, 36 hours before they could finally get it fixed because it was so cold. If I remember right, something like that. It was pretty bad.
We're a long ways from making any decisions on what we're gonna do here, but I just have to go back to Ann when you said you didn't ask for these improvements. The truth is, anybody in town, I suppose, could come in here and say the same thing, well, I didn't ask for that improvement, why should I pay for it? And that's unfortunately, fortunately, maybe that's not the way it works.
Oh, I fully get that, and I'm thankful that they went out there and did it, I'm not gonna lie. But like I said before, my biggest argument is going to be defending, because the last time this conversation came up about 10 years ago when I was looking at buying my place, I think Shayla was fairly new, and she had said that we would be grandfathered in as agriculture, but when I go to sell the place, the next person wouldn't be able to be that way. And I said, well, that immediately takes away all of my resale value, or a big chunk of my resale value. And since then, I've put in, like I said, at least a $350,000 house since I bought the place. So, I mean, again, I'm gonna stick with my argument of the property taxes that I'm gonna pay, how long is it gonna take me to recoup the value of a water main or a water line that goes past my house? You know, you're gonna get a bigger benefit for annexing me, and then I'm gonna get out of that water line. In my opinion. If I can stay agriculture and if I can resell as agriculture, it wouldn't decrease my appeal near as much. But, can I drag you into this?
Not really, because I'm not on city water or electric or sewer or anything. I'm just a bystander on the side of the road, newly moved in, and so I just
But
listening.
with the water improvements, as you go further north of town, how far out are you gonna go? Are you gonna go out past Breitling's? Are you gonna go clear out to 12th Avenue on their house? I mean, cause if I'm gonna get the shaft, I don't wanna be the only one in the neighborhood that does. And maybe I missed maybe I missed where you're talking your boundaries, how far out and around town your boundaries are gonna go.
You didn't miss that.
Okay.
We have just got started. You didn't miss much.
So basically, at this point, do you think your main concern is your resale value if it,
And my property taxes.
and your property taxes?
Cause I'm a single parent with a big ass mortgage payment. That's my own fault, my own doing, I understand that, but you tack on, right now I pay $2,200 in county taxes, so I'm guessing I'm probably gonna double that.
I have no idea. Do you have any idea, Shayla? What would the difference in taxes be on what she's talking about?
Well, this one that we're looking at right here, theirs is 2,200, 2,300 right now. Oops, I went a little too far. And it would go up to 39, so it'd be a difference of 1,600, 1,700 a year.
So basically, close to doubling it,
It's another third or
yeah,
another half of it.
and on my salary, that's a big chunk. I mean, that's almost a month's worth of wages for me in the job I currently do. And I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. That's a big concern for me. Great big concern.
Well, at this stage of the game, our discussion is, do we charge extra for those people out of town? Or, which is what used to be, for some reason they stopped charging more for those residents out of town, or annex. Because it does cost us more than we can, we're losing money on residents outside of city limits. On the utilities don't.
They're not a moneymaker.
Hmm?
They're not a moneymaker.
No, they hopefully pay for themselves, but like we said, if we have a water main break or a major electrical problem, doesn't get a sub fixed and it burns up for some reason, we've got a huge expense that you're receiving the benefits, it's costing us more to get out there. But we'll never recoup.
How far out are people hooked up to city utilities? Besides me?
It varies, going north, all of Paterkas and all that way out are on water. They don't have electricity, that's Dakota Energy. There's territories for electric, and that's a Dakota Energy territory. Going south, we go, Anson's are on, Sievertson's are on, and then you go over to Fulton's are on. You know, Danny Fisher, that whole Third Avenue all the way out is on. Going out east, we go out, the movie theater is on. It skips back and forth, I think, for the electric. Going that direction, there's some on Dakota Energy, and they have an option going that direction for some reason. And then they're on water. Going out, obviously, you know, Asmussen's are on. And then on the other side, it's Breitling's are on. So it's pretty big around.
How did it get so split up? I mean, I got there and that was what I was hooked up to. I assumed it was because Iverson's, you go through their driveway and they're in city limits, but how come you can pick and choose over by the movie theater?
I don't know why they could at that time, that, for the electric. The water is ours, but the electric was, I don't know. I don't know why they got to choose that. That's been for years, as far as I know. Do you know anything?
Don't even quote me on this, but I think the line was bad coming into the movie theater, which was Dakota Energy, and that came clear down by Warren Skinner's and up in there. And they couldn't afford to put in new lines just for the movie theater. The city was relatively close, they could just bop right in there and take it over. Don't, like I said, don't quote me on that though.
Oh, and
At
the
the time it
airport.
mate sense, but now it's like, what the heck?
And the airport, everybody at the airport's on city, water, and sewer out at the airport. The airport is kind of the edge. Wangsness's is water and electric across from the airport. That's the edge that way.
Well, I can give you a little history about that water deal out there by your place, 'cause I lived there for 17 years. When I moved there, the water ended down there by the creek. They're not even there, it was up on the hill. So they put a 2-inch water main down there, and it went to that house that Iversons lived in. The original water main there came there, and there was a meter pit or whatever down there by the bridge. And then that went kitty cornered across there. Well, I hooked on there. It cost me double the water rates plus double the hookup fee to hook up there. And I had an inch pipe. An inch from there up there where I lived. And then they went on with another one that went clear out there to the end, to the corner. I can't remember who that, I think Wayne White put that in. But we had to pay for putting all that in there. Now, the main reason that water deal was upgraded this time to your place is on account of fire protection. Because if Jim Iverson lives in the city limits there, if he had a fire before we put that in there, to get water to his place, you had to go from clear up there by where Peterman's live on the corner with water to get there, because there was no, a 2-inch main would not furnish enough water. That was the reason that was upgraded. That was in the works before we even started this upgrade of the water system. That was put, in fact, that was put on the project while we were doing it.
Yeah. Well, when that's what we thought with
What?
with my house, but when we went to go build my new house, we couldn't find the meter pit. Even down at Iverson's, Terry had no idea where my meter pit was.
I know, 'cause I was in on finding it.
Well, they couldn't find the water main, and so because they thought that the water main went down my side of the ditch, clear down to the end of the road, but it didn't, because I was gonna move my water pit, my meter pit, to west of where that new fire hydrant is. So it was a straight shot in. But I ended up having to move my meter pit and trench in 300 feet of water line, because it wasn't where it was.
Well, I had a meter pit in the basement when I lived, a
No, you
meter
had
in the
you had the
basement.
meter, you had the shut off.
What?
You had the shut off when we couldn't get to that. The meter pit's clear down by the bridge at Iverson's.
Well,
On
my
Iverson's
meter
side.
was in the basement when I lived there in that old house.
Anyway, I ended up putting in a lot more line than I ever expected to on that house, so it is what it is, and I can't change it, but
How many houses are we talking about that are outside? Did you say a number earlier? That's right now.
Water, we have 20 commercial outside and we have 40 residential outside. Electric, we have 20 outside and 20 commercial and 26 residential.
and how many of them are full?
Both water and sewer,
Yeah.
water and electric. There's quite a few that are the same.
So the max number you have is 40.
Yeah, 40 of outside water.
That are outside that you're servicing.
And what's the average, I mean, from my point of view, and I haven't run any of the numbers or anything in this, I would probably come out further ahead paying an extra fee rather than paying the extra $1,700 a year in property taxes, depending on what you are talking about for this fee and what I would be assessed at. But I'm also probably one of the newer places too, correct?
What's that?
I'm probably one of the newer places that's hooked up too, correct?
I would
guess.
Probably, well, Nelson's, is that who built that new house?
Right, yeah, down by Ryman's.
Yeah, that's a new one too. That's water and electric. They have a septic system. Guess I'm not really sure. I think that's probably it for the new ones. And I don't know how far.
Probably Heasley's out by the golf course, some of those couple of those houses,
Yeah,
they're not necessarily newer, but they're, I mean, as new as mine, but they're going to assess higher.
yeah, I mean, Riesel's and, yeah, that, all of those out there, they're just on water. They're not on electric.
I would advocate,
Oh, and
in-
Riesel's are also, I mean, the Meadow Heights is water, they're not electric.
Meadow Heights.
That's where, Rogers Inn's up by past,
That cul-de-sac?
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
From my perspective, I would, if I had to choose between annexing and paying above and beyond for additional repairs, I would go opt for above and beyond.
Isn't that part of the discussion?
that is part of the discussion, and I think, realistically, you have to be contiguous to the city of Miller to be annexed in. So we can't pick and choose, like we couldn't jump you and go with someone else. So what everybody would like, I mean, the county and everybody would like our city squared off. There's people that have, their backyards are in the township and their houses in the city. It's kinda crazy where the city lines are right now. Some of those would be a big benefit for the county, so they're not splitting property like that. If we did an annexation, we'd probably have to send it out and say, from the railroad tracks south, you guys all have the option to have this much on your county taxes, or your city taxes, or this much for extra for your utility bills. Everybody has to be the same, we're not gonna force it. We don't wanna go to a forced annexation, cause that's a lot of work. We don't really wanna do that. So every resident is gonna have to agree, annexation, or the majority, I'm gonna say, annexation or utilities, which way is best for this group of people. Now, if you want your streets taken care of and streetlights taken care of and that type of thing, you might wanna be annexed in.
And I'm not disagreeing, but I'm saying, representing the people that are here, if, you know, that's my opinion. I'm representing the people that are here, that's the route I would go, you know, and I get that. I fully understand all that, and I'm just,
And this is just
Yeah.
the beginning of this whole conversation,
Oh,
just
I-
started, so, yeah, we're glad to hear from you and get these points of view, and we need to know these things, obviously.
I would rather come here and bitch at you at a meeting than have to fight you elsewhere. I mean, and I'm not trying to be bitchy or anything, but this is just my opinion and my sentiments, and this is supposed to be the place to
Well, absolutely.
get that, so this
That's
is
why
what you're
we're
getting
having
from me.
That's why we're having the meeting. Let's hear it now.
And so,
Yeah.
I'm sorry that the rest of the neighborhood's not here, and there's not more people here to say that, but,
Well, there will be.
yeah.
I hope there will be.
I know, I'm
After
sure
this
there will,
meeting.
I'm sure there will be later, but, you know,
Sure.
I've been watching for this, like I said, this conversation came up when I bought my house, and I've been watching city council minutes like a hawk for the last 10 years waiting for this, so, I mean, and that was one of the concerns I had when I did build my new house, that it was gonna come back to haunt me.
The truth is, the easy thing for us would be to do nothing. Let's just go on doing exactly what we're doing, we don't have to have special meetings on this. But someday, it is gonna happen that there will be a major breakage somewhere, and it's gonna cost the city a boatload of money. And so we would really be a little negligent in our duties if we're not looking down the road saying, someday this is gonna happen. And we need to be taking in some money to prepare for that, because again, the surcharges alone are not, they're not meant to do the repairs, the major repairs that will come with something like that.
All they are is a loan payment, that's
I
it.
can say they're paying for what's already installed.
Yeah, that's just the loan payment.
And it's just good business, I get it, I fully understand why you're having these conversations and, but
Yeah,
I don't look forward to it,
That's why this is called a work session.
yeah, I know, so, like I said, I knew this was a place to
no, that's great.
Absolutely.
bring it up, so.
And we appreciate you coming here other than somewhere else.
Yes.
Yeah, we appreciate the company.
Yeah, we'd much rather
More
told
show
us
up.
about it than complaining
coffee shop.
someplace else that will do you no good at all. This is
The
the
meeting
place.
after the meeting that I just left, you mean?
So just looking at Shayla's example here, if you do the difference in your property taxes for the year, you're at $138.75 a month increase. If you look at what doubling the rates would be,
This isn't doubling though, it's only a half.
oh,
Well, yeah, it's only a half for electric and a half for water.
okay.
Half of,
Like currently we charge $4 per thousand for water, we would do it 6 instead of doubling it to 8. Which is what I think they used to be is doubled. I started it as 6, so it's half again rather than a double.
Well, using those rates, you'd be increased to 104 approximately a month. So the difference between this initial calculation and the property tax increase is $34 a month.
that's still, times 12 months, that's $500.
And what I would like to see happen, like if we decide to section, like you say, do it in stages. Everybody in that stage, I'd like to have utility bills and actual property taxes, so you could make an informed decision. What your utility bill was for the last year with the new rate, and what your taxes were, and what they would change to, so that you could know, I'm gonna have $1,600 more in property taxes, and if I do this with the utilities, this is exactly what it would be for your property, based on your usage.
I think that would be the only way you could
Yeah.
honestly get this past anybody, is to provide that information. I mean,
And it would not, if we did annex it into, say, Dakota Energy Territory, that's gonna cost us for 7 years, it's gonna cost us. After that, then we would start making, or at least saving money, but we would lose money for the first 7 years on the electricity part.
So is there other expenses involved in this besides if we take over electric, we have to pay 25% for 7 years to,
Well, if you
Dakota
did
Energy.
Meadow Heights, you have all of that, you have to maintain the streets. And maybe streetlights, I don't know if they have streetlights up there or not. That would be another expense.
Now, if you annex in Dakota Energy, you have to buy their line from them too, right? You can't just take over their line for nothing, you have to pay them,
And I don't know what that 25% of the gross is, I don't know if that's part of that. Cause we've done it in a couple other places, we just finished paying off for 7 years. I don't know if that 25% of the gross is part of that, I have no
yeah,
idea.
I'm not sure.
That's
how
just the
it works.
contract that's out there right now, as if you do.
I know going north of town, that wire's not very old there, they put
Right.
a lot of dollars into that wire here not many years ago.
Right. And like I said, I don't know if that would change on that, but, and I don't know if that's a state law, I kinda think it's a state law that if you annex into a rural electric, you have to pay 25% of the gross. So. And obviously, we don't make 25% on the electricity, so we would be losing money on that.
that brought up another question for me. If you annex me in there, Do I have to put in curb and gutter? And am I gonna get a street light all the way out to my house, out to the end of the road? Cause it is dark. It's dark all the way down Second Street, period. I mean, and that, if you make me put in curb and gutter, I got a lot of property front to put in curb and gutter, and that's another expense that I'm not gonna be very happy about incurring.
I think they probably have to do that on the first street first.
Yeah. There's a lot that's already in town that doesn't have curb and gutter, that's another work session topic.
Yeah, but it's a concern. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm 40 years old, theoretically, I'm gonna live there for another 40 years.
One benefit is in 40 years, there won't be any surcharges that are currently on.
My property will have depreciated significantly too.
That are currently on.
And we're trying with this process, so we don't have these surcharges when that 40 and 50 years comes around and we have to start, not we, our kids have to start this process all over again. Cause that's why these surcharges are in place, is because there just wasn't money there to do any of this work. And there won't be on our current profit. We barely make enough to keep the lights on in here, believe it or not.
Teach people to shut the lights off when they leave the room.
And get your pill when you turn off the lights and you fall asleep.
We appreciate you coming and your input, so I don't know if we go on from, or was this pretty much the total discussion for tonight?
It's, where do we go from here? I mean,
So we can narrow it down a little bit. When you get out north up by the golf course, those guys have city water only. So obviously, I mean, we're not talking about annexing anything to that area.
I wouldn't think, that wouldn't make sense of work.
It wouldn't make sense at all. And Meadow Heights that's north of Mid Dakota, is that?
No, Meadow Heights is between the Dewdrop Inn and Mid Dakota, it's that, where Rogers ends.
Oh.
Parkview Place.
Yeah, Parkview Place up there.
And they are not, that is not annexed in at this point either?
No.
And they have what for utilities?
They have water also, cause
Just
all of that
water.
up there is Dakota Energy.
Okay,
So, I mean, if you start with that, it would make more sense to leave them for last.
However, correct me if I'm wrong, but do you get city sales tax revenue from the golf course?
No.
So wouldn't it make more sense to go that route and get them in there first and
Well,
start
and that's the
collecting?
same way with like the Dewdrop Inn, we don't get sales tax with that either.
So to me, it makes more sense to start there and start with your sales tax there rather than start jacking up a twice a year property tax payment on the other sides of town.
But
You're gonna have a more steady and consistent revenue stream from those businesses, because you will pick up, if Dewdrop isn't in there, won't you pick up the implement dealers? You'll pick up Dairy Queen and the veterinary and the
Dairy
county.
Queen is in. Foreman's
Okay.
is where
Well, then
Foreman's
you-
is in.
You would pick up C&B, you would pick up the golf course, you would pick up Brad Manning, you would pick up Dewdrop. I mean,
Brad Manning wouldn't have any sales tax because it's paid on where the service is delivered, not where the
Okay.
business is.
I was just,
So where
yeah.
my house is, I pay state only.
yeah, I was just thinking of the businesses that are out there.
And C and B, we'd be getting obviously a lot of property tax because it's a large building, but sales tax, we don't get any sales tax on an egg product. So if there's any equipment they're selling, which would be amazing if we got sales tax on the equipment, but we don't.
But you could charge them on their service calls.
Where it's
If they're in town.
They do a lot of shop work.
And I think I don't know, if it's on a tractor, I don't think we can charge them anything
But
on
yeah,
a product,
and that's,
We would know that because we're tight on it.
right?
but I mean,
Mhm.
to me, it's a no-brainer if you can get you can get sales tax.
Right.
But what are those people on for city services? Any of the ones she's talking about?
Water.
What's Foreman? Water. So I think where we'd really have
Foreman's
to
are
start,
water and electric.
No, they're electric.
they are
Foreman's
electric
But
also.
they're in the city. That's where our
And
city
sewer.
is. Yeah, they stop at Foreman's.
So those places are on all three.
They're already in city limits.
That are in city
Oh,
limits.
they're,
As soon
they're, okay, yeah.
So as soon as you get outside of city limits, which is Foreman's, it's water, that direction. That's it. Like, CNB is just water, I believe.
But have you figured what you lose in sales tax from the golf course?
Bed, booze, and board is what? Be big benefit.
And you would also be able to go back, if you go that way, what about Mid-Dakota? And Builder Solutions?
Builder Solutions, we did lose because they moved from there, out there.
You would be able to pick them back up.
But Mid-Dakota, where the services delivered.
But are they on City Electric or are they on Dakota Energy?
But they wouldn't get any sales tax. I mean, they'd get.
I don't know, it's,
I don't think we're looking to annex, just go out and start annexing land in. I think what we need to concentrate on is, we would probably start with any place, residents or businesses that have 2 or more city services. And if we're gonna do it in phases, it would be, I mean, there are places that have all 3, right?
Yes.
And that's gonna be our logical starting point, are places that are not annexed in, that already enjoy 3 of our services,
Right.
all 3 of them. Water,
Some of
sewer,
them
and
even with
electric.
the street and street lights up to their property.
Right, and are not annexed in. I mean, that's gonna be our logical starting point. But somewhere along the line, we just have to address the long-term implication of a big outage or water lines that are bursting, whatever it may be. And so, but that may well not be annexation. It may just be figuring out a rate that we can increase base fee, something that we can apply to start building that fund up, that cushion up a little bit.
What do we think the, possible timeframe on annexation would be? I mean, how long, do you have any idea how long that's?
This is our first discussion,
But is there anybody else that's like, oh yeah, you start here and it takes 6 months to get through the process? Do you have any idea what that process length is?
the process is, for an annexation, is a petition to be annexed in. Once that petition is approved by the city, it has to be a public hearing, and that has to be published in the newspaper. We have to have a public hearing, and then we have to do, I believe, a resolution annexing in specific property. We did this just not too long ago with, Beaner Edition since I've been here, and where the Harold Brothers shop is, that was outside of city limits, and we annexed that in, so. All things going really well, it could take 3 months. But that's a very simple, straight shot.
3 months plus.
3 months at a minimum.
3 months at a
Yeah.
minimum, and then. Cause nobody's even.
I mean, cause that's with somebody coming and saying, I want to be annexed, that's probably the timeframe. This process of going through and having meetings, I would say we'd probably have to have public meetings with. Say if we chose an area that's got water, sewer, and electric now, we wanna have meetings with those residents wherever we're gonna start. And have that conversation so they can be in here with Ann and have these questions. So, it would be a long process, once we know where we're gonna go.
You're forgetting the major benefit of being annexed in though. You could sit up here.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I already have a government job, no thank you.
Nice try though, Jeff.
Yeah.
That was really
Good
good,
point,
I
yeah.
like that.
Good point.
You almost had me hooked for a second.
Yeah,
Just a microsecond.
yeah.
there is a bright side.
Depends on which side of the table you're sitting on.
And all that money it'd make being a city council person too. You could pay for that property tax.
But and not to change the subject, has the sales tax issue north of town come up and been pursued?
This is our first conversation, so that's where we're at. You
Yeah.
brought that up and we appreciate that.
I mean, and I don't know what kind of business Fulton's are doing south of town with their new big elevator, but I mean, there's,
Again, that's egg and we don't get anything off of egg.
Just the state does.
The state, yeah.
Yes, we do get money from ag.
Yeah,
It's,
oh,
it's a
huge.
roundabout way.
Yes,
If,
we
if
would
the
be
farm,
lost without
if
egg.
ag don't get it, the city of Miller don't get it. It's pretty simple.
Yeah,
It's been that way my whole career of being in Miller. If the farmers don't get it, I don't get it. Pretty simple.
they don't come to town and go to supper. So,
And I don't know, I don't know what we move on to if we're done. I don't think that our focus here is going out and trying to find new taxable sources. I don't think that's our focus at this point, that we're looking to take over the golf course because we want their sales tax or whoever it might be. Our goal is a lot simpler than that. It is just cleaning up the boundaries of the city and then finding an equitable way to charge those people who are using our services that are not part of our city, that are not part of the city, in the city limits or annexed in. And so that's really confusing things to think that we're gonna start looking elsewhere for other additional sales tax revenues. I just don't think that's part of our conversation here at all.
I don't know if other people are gonna see it that way though. That's not how I see it. To be honest, I mean, not to be disrespectful or maybe, but that's just.
And I think that's the point of all of this, is to get both sides so you can make an informed decision as we go on with the work sessions.
And I
So-
know more people show up, so.
Yeah,
And
And I think-
maybe I am the minority. Maybe I am. Like I said, that's my 2 cents. So you've heard it and.
and some people may not even know because they might not watch the, like you said, you've been scoping it out for 10 years to see when this was gonna happen.
I did have one other person call and he said, you know, I don't think it's worth my time to spend the night with you guys, so, okay, your choice, I mean, it's,
And like
you're
I said,
in that area.
maybe I am the minority.
Speak now,
That
or-
was the only other person that I talked to, so,
speak now or hold your peace.
yeah. He was like, well, I don't think it's worth it. So,
My experience on the city council is we'll hold these meetings, but the closer we get to it, then that's when we'll get more people involved with it. When it gets right up to it, that's when we get people involved. This is just informing us what's out there possible and what we can do or can't do or don't wanna do.
and start thinking about which way to, how to tackle it, where to start, that type of thing.
Well, I think this, for my part of this, I think this is something we need to put some more thought into. How we're gonna do this and what we're gonna do, because my main goal with all of this, to where everybody gets treated fair. Cause we can't run out and start picking and choosing this one and that one and everything, so I think we've got a lot of options to look at here before we get done.
To narrow it down though, can we start with those that are already on 3 services?
Start the annexation, but
I think they're, at this point, they would be the only ones that would even be considered to be annexed because they are sometimes just directly across the street. I mean, they're sharing a street with somebody.
my question is though, you pick, and yes, they got water, sewer and electric, logical place to start. They are outside of city limits. Do we pick? I don't wanna say pick on them, I don't quite know how to say this properly, but are they any different than Ann? Should Ann be paying the higher rates at this point in time? Should everybody outside of city limits pay a higher rate? And then we discuss annexing them in and dropping their rate.
I'm right across the road from somebody that's got 2 services, but where are you gonna fit me in?
And you have 1 or 2 services?
I have 2 services.
You have 2 services,
But,
yeah.
and Eleanor's got her own septic tank, I believe, as well, because of the creek, there's no lift station.
On that side of the creek, right?
Right, so, I mean. And technically, I think city limits goes through 1/3 of her garage. Part of her garage is outside of city limits.
I know there is part of their property is outside, part of it, that's one of those that's split. There's a few, there's a couple businesses and a couple residents that their backyard or whatever is outside and the front is inside, so. I know when I was at the county, that was a big thing that the assessor even wanted done at that time, at least can the city please clean up these that are split, you know, and annex in the backyards of these people so that we're not,
Builders Cashway,
yep. that's
part of their
one them.
building is
Yeah,
city.
that area, Rick's Body Shop, all of those are part in, part out. There's some up over on Third Street, Third Avenue, going out towards the dump ground that their backyards are out, so.
I think the annexation is gonna take a lot more time. Maybe we should just start with the rates, work on that first and then go to the annexation.
I would say if you're going to do annexation at all, you could maybe start, give those people that have water, sewer and electric the option, we're gonna start this rate effective whatever date. Would you prefer to be annexed without ever having to pay that rate? Or do we just, I mean, this is stuff that we need to think about as we go along. Just give everybody a letter and say, as of this date, your water's gonna go up this amount, your electric's gonna go up this amount. We have to decide what that amount would be. And in the future, we'd like to discuss annexation.
Have you surveyed or talked to anybody else, or is this your first opportunity?
This is our first thing that and that'll be another thing, do we wanna start with a survey? Do we, you know, that's where we need to go, where do we go from here? With this list of people. Businesses and residents.
Did you share that list, or?
I don't care to right now, since we are just in this beginning stage,
That's fine, I didn't know.
yeah.
How many people are on your list?
It depends, water residential is 40 people, water, commercial is 20.
How many letters would you have to send to cover everybody?
I don't know, I'd have to rerun this with everybody in one group, so I know. Probably, I would say 60 at the most.
That's gonna be your cheapest option, is to start there with the survey.
But we have to know what that letter is going to contain. What do we need to do with that?
And there's a lot of those that we're not even gonna consider annexing them in. A lot of those that are on have one service, that's not even a consideration, I don't think.
I don't think at this point for sure that would be. I mean, granted, we would lose a lot if there was a water main break out that direction. We
That's just-
would never pay for it with the number of people that are on it. But we will never pay for putting the line out there to begin with. The line that we put out there will never be paid for with the water, the money we get off the water.
But if you go, okay, to be fair then, if you go that route where you're not gonna annex them in if they're only one service, are you gonna give me the option to see what it costs me to get on and then to get onto Dakota Energy to get off the City Electric? So that I don't have to be annexed in?
I can tell you right now that Dakota Energy's ours is 843 or whatever. Dakota Energy was, it's like, it's 11 something for 9 months and 13 cents per kilowatt for 3 months.
And what's the city for?
The city is like 8.5 cents a kilowatt.
You have to add those two numbers.
That's what the surcharge.
Yeah. The total,
Yeah.
yeah. The total is 8.5 cents per kilowatt and $15 a month for the base fee. Dakota Energy is $9 a month for the base fee, 13 cents for 3 months, and just over 11 and just over 13 for the other.
And I don't think they bring your line to you for nothing.
No, I know they don't, but I mean, to be fair, I'm asking you, would that be an option? To be
And
fair
there
to me,
again, Dakota Energy has a territory, Miller has a territory. Those territories are set by the Public Utilities Commission and PURE. We don't change those limits. We don't have that option unless we do an annexation, and then that has to go through the Public Utilities Commission as well, if we were to annex into their territory. So that's not really, like I said, that's in the state's hands when it comes to doing that. So,
just,
yeah.
Better off to get a cistern.
Huh?
You'd be better off to get a cistern and call water.
yeah. And just pump it out of the curb.
It's a little dry right now.
Yeah, right now I might be kind of thirsty, but as much dirt as Dustin's hauling in, it might be. Like I said, I'm not trying to be
No, we need,
confrontational in
We
any way,
need
shape, or
input.
form.
we need this
Please.
input, that's
Please.
what we would hope for. Obviously, we had a lot more conversation having you here than we would have without somebody, so.
My mom tends to get me in trouble sometimes, so I don't want that to be the case tonight.
You're good.
You're doing fine.
It gives us a lot more to think about too.
Right.
This
All sides
is
of
a
it.
big issue. I mean,
It
there's
is.
a lot of different angles to what we're talking about. And we could really blame Jeff, actually, because Jeff kind of started this whole work session idea. And so,
Thanks, Jeff.
thanks, Jeff. you
But
know.
this has been on a watch list.
It
Like I
has,
said,
this
I've been at
particular
this-
subject.
I've been watching for 10 years, so.
Well, Bob threw out the option, we could do nothing.
Well, that's just it. Doing nothing would be way easier, but we
Be a lot
wouldn't be
easier.
doing our job if we did nothing.
And that goes with a lot of other things.
That's the route I vote for.
If 20 years ago you had annexed in all 40 of those, just say if there was 40 of them that you had annexed in, average, right now it's $1,600, your taxes would be going up. Just say if there was 1,000 in the last 20 years, that's $800,000. The city has just walked away from it already. You know, that's a chunk of change, and, you know, you're looking at these projects that you're doing, that would have made a hell of a lot of difference in these projects. You did the work anyway.
Right.
You paid for it anyway, but you would have had another $800,000 in the bank if you had annexed in those properties 20 years ago. And those places had services when I got here. And I've been here 20 years.
The smartest thing would have been way back when we decided to provide services outside of city limits. It's like you annex in and then we'll provide services. Like she said, years ago, but
And then maybe Ann wouldn't have built her house.
I wouldn't be living out there. I'd probably be 30 miles from town. Work's not an issue.
Which isn't so bad for a while, but once the kids get into sports,
Oh,
St. Lawrence is a long ways away at times. There was one night I spent 50 miles between Miller and St. Lawrence after work. Because of my kids. 4 kids going 4 different directions. 50 miles in one night. I'm like, this is ridiculous.
was my ex-husband deployed last year, and I had to take my girls to St. Lawrence to daycare every day? It was 20 miles, and I never left town. It was 20 miles a day, and I never left town just to get my kids to and from daycare.
It doesn't seem like it's that far, but it is.
Over and back. If you gotta go more than twice, it's even more.
Are we done?
I don't know, what's the next step? Do we wanna have an idea in mind for me to start doing something before we have our next session? Do you guys wanna just think about it and we'll decide what I should do next?
I think if we're gonna have these work sessions, we have to have a plan kind of set to keep going forward.
Right.
I
I mean, what type, I've asked other cities what their rates are outside of city limits. I got all over the board, which is why I kinda picked, I mean, I got from nothing like we're doing now to double, which is quite high, I think. So that's why I just kinda, let's just start in the middle. If you want me to do a synopsis on every single one of these people and have the county help me with the taxes on that? Do you want me to start with doing that type of thing with just the people that have all 3 services? Do you wanna think about it and tell me on Monday where to go?
If
Where
you're
to
gonna,
go?
if you're gonna raise the rates, you about gotta do it for everybody that's outside the city
I
limits.
think so too. I think so too. It should be just a, and then what should that rate be?
Are you saying for everybody, if they have 1 or 3 services?
Well,
I think
each
they're
one
right.
would have their own increase and whatever they
Depending
have,
on
they
what
would.
service they had.
Okay,
Yeah, I think if you have water, if you're outside city limits, you have water, they should all pay the exact same rate, whether they're part of that. I mean, that's the only fair way to do it. It's not fair to charge an extra and not the people that only have water. That's not fair. Anybody outside the city limits should have the same rate.
and this is just my opinion, but if you kind of start with a survey to get more input on what people are looking at, so that they have an idea what's going on, do you think that would help?
I do. I think we get more people like Ann in here and hearing both sides and why we're doing this. But in that survey, if I had somebody to help me, what do you want on the survey? I mean, do we want,
I don't know if you're gonna get a response to a written survey, to be honest.
you know, I'm surprised what we got on our front desk. We got probably 30% of them did respond, which shocked me.
1,500 people in town. give
But
or
the survey
take,
would go to just these people.
But 1,500 people in town, I would expect a higher return on a written survey. If you've got 60 people on this, you might get a better, more honest response if you do a one-on-one
Visit.
visit with them. I mean, it's more time consuming, yes, but you're gonna get, even if you did a sampling of them, you're gonna get a better response and better picture talking to them one-on-one.
The only problem with that is that they don't get the exact information, that each person, if we have 7 people here going out to visit, you have 7 different conversations,
Then pick 2 or 1 or 2.
you know,
Have them all come to the meeting.
well, that's what
Send out a card and say, be here on this day, you're not here, you don't care.
cause I'm not gonna respond to a written survey on this, I mean, it's hard to convey sentiments in a written survey sometimes. Just my 2 cents, again.
Or maybe even just a notice to those people of the next meeting or whatever. I mean, 'cause
Also-
some people don't watch what we're doing on council meetings.
No.
And I only
Right
read it
now?
in Jan's
Oh, there's
blurb,
3.
Jan's blurb in the paper. I didn't even read it in the council
Thank
meeting, I read it in the
I
blurb.
am red.
All right.
But again, I was watching for it. You know, I think a notice with your intent or a phone call or something would be at least a little more courteous, I think, maybe. Maybe not effective, but maybe courteous would be kind of how I'd say it. Again,
I do think before, in my personal opinion, before we would want to go to a public meeting, we have to know what this dollar amount is for the rates that will sustain what we needed to do. So that when they're here, it's, this rate is what it'll be.
So actually, our first step should be to figure out the rates so they have a comparison.
Yeah, so that is the rate that we would need to charge in order to provide the services. Outside of city limits, because we are missing $800,000 in property taxes.
At least.
So how do we come up with that number? Engineer? Is that something SPN could do on the water side of it?
DGR on the electric. I can ask them, we're gonna be paying engineering fees, but we can ask them.
I would imagine any one of us would just be throwing darts at the wall.
And if you play darts like I do, you'd never hit them. I'm lucky if I hit the board. I don't roll my bullseye. I mean, I can start there. Do you want me to start with contacting our engineers to see what they would recommend?
The guy that does rate studies, would he have any input of other communities that do this kind of thing?
I'm guessing they probably had their hands on some of this already in other communities.
I would think so. Yeah, for the water, MAPS does a lot for us for water. They don't charge us anything. I could ask the gentleman that did our rates for us for water. Electric is, as far as I know, is just DGR engineering.
We don't wanna start sticking a lot of money into engineering fees, so I mean, that's gonna take right off what we're trying to collect to start with. Somehow we have to have an idea, I agree with that, but we sure don't wanna suddenly have $10,000 or more stuck into engineering fees.
Right. It's gonna take us a long time at 4 cents a kilowatt to make
Right,
up.
to make up just what we paid the engineer and,
Well, I could send a note to the guy that does our rates for electric and just say, what would it cost us to have you help us decide what our outside electric rate should be? Give me a figure.
Can you get some of that information from other
Cities,
cities?
they're, like I said, they're all over the board, so it's, I mean, they're from doubling the rates to doing nothing like we are, so.
ask them how they calculated it. Just find out how they
A
got
lot
it.
of them probably calculated it 20 or 30 years ago and just kept up with that formula. You know, if it's double the rate, we're just gonna keep doubling it. If it's, you know, if it's half the rate, we're just gonna, they've probably been doing it forever. Because a lot of the people now didn't know where their rates came from, for the most part. Other than the ones that said, let me know what you find out because we're trying to do the same thing. So, there were a few cities that said that as well.
you know, if we're doing anything, it's gonna be better than us doing nothing. We can't plan for the worst case scenario. We just can't do that. Nobody could afford it if we were gonna plan for the whole system going down up at the golf course, up in that area, we gotta redo the whole thing, we can't plan for that. And so, doing something
It's better than.
is just gonna be better than doing nothing. And we can't double it, I agree, that's not right. That's not gonna go over. I think where you're at is a great starting point with what you've shown us here. And then those people have the option of paying that and or an annexation.
I could have done a whole year instead of 6 months just to get an actual, what their utilities would have been on the 2 properties I picked, but
And as far as the annexation goes too, don't, I'd like to see it on a map, sitting in front of me, so it's drawn out and squared out. I mean, when it's zigzagging in and out, those are the kind of things that we want to be clearing up, I think.
yes, that
And
is,
so we'd have to, instead of just looking at here, I'd like to see it on a map and say, all right, but we're gonna clean up these boundaries and square this off.
I can go get a big
to-
map right now and show you.
Well, and I don't know if we wanna start that now. Is that gonna be a subcommittee thing? And I think, to what Tammy said, let's accomplish something. So should we turn some of this over to a subcommittee to study on a map and we have a zoning board or who's on that committee? Oh yeah, I'm afraid I am, actually.
There you go.
I think you might be too, Joyce.
Alright, so
Chairman.
Zeller, Steers, and Lichty.
Oh, man.
Sorry.
Yeah,
But I think
You
that's,
did
I
it.
think that's something
You
important,
did.
that we would start with that map and then we would look at where we think the recommendations are. Let's clear these areas up and square things off properly.
And that's also where the zoning would come in, that if we are taking in A, we need to create a new zone called A. Outside the city, I mean, within the city. Because right now you can't have any animals, in town, basically, cats and dogs. Maybe a guinea pig.
But the ones that have it are already grandfathered in, correct?
That's what I would recommend. I mean, that's up to when we actually do this, but that's what I would recommend, is that we would, because you got horses east, you got cattle, both east and west. Goats and chickens that way. I don't know what else you got.
That's enough, huh? Justin's old enough to hurt too much, it's gonna make it come expense down now.
And what would happen if Ann's out by her, that big lot just to the west of Brightlings, that whole big block? What if that became the next
Development,
development?
right? Brightlings have.
That's all Brightlings, and from conversations I've had with Brian, I don't think that there's any interest in developing that at this point.
Well, he's got a big square, but even if we went to the section line, then there is some, I don't know who owns past that, past Brightlings.
Brian owns all that alfalfa field to the west of him.
Yeah.
That's
He
all
owns a
Brian,
big chunk.
that's all Brian.
Does he go all the way to the section line? To the
He goes all the way to the road?
Yes,
All the way to
across the road from Laura and Kelly, or Laura and Clay. He goes all the way up to 12th Avenue. And conversations I've had with him, he's not interested in developing it, but that's
But that's not to say he won't
someday he will
move
change
when he
his mind.
retires and somebody else will buy that place
Yeah.
and wanna break it up into a nice housing development or whatever. I mean, you don't know what, and that's another thing that expense wise, you get a development out there, that's a big expense to the city as well. It's something we need to plan for. Maybe not out there, but
Somewhere.
somewhere.
But there again, you had the map in front of you, I just looked at it, it stops about the bridge on that side of town.
It does. If you go on my side of the road at the bridge, my side of the road north,
So you're the city owns that whole road, whole second, all the way out past your house. The other side on Fifth, it stops at the bridge.
Right.
But we run power all the way out to Bright House.
Bright Links do have city power. Do they have anything else, city?
Water. They have water and electric out there.
But that's what I mean, the map is, you do need to get a map in front of you.
Yes.
You drop down to my street and go north, I wouldn't object at all. And leave me out of it, drop down my street, go north. Huh? And not annex that in? Leave Bright Links and Duxbury's out of it?
Well, yeah, if they take me, they're gonna take Fulton too.
To the north. Yep. Is that what's squared
I
up?
think it's gonna take a lot more discussion.
Yeah.
It's gonna take a lot more discussion.
Oh,
It's,
yeah.
this isn't gonna happen in the next couple, however.
Right, no, this is-
No, this is
Years.
not, this is the beginning. It's gonna
Yep.
take.
So is there a agreement on what needs to come next?
We've
I
really
would
got,
think, so if our, I'm sorry, who, Jim, were you talking there? I'm sorry.
Jeff,
Jeff, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, I think we got kind of two separate issues here with the clearing up the boundaries and the rates.
Right.
It's, and they're both probably equally as important.
And so what I was absolutely gonna say that, Jeff, is I think we've got two committee things going on here. I think the utility committee maybe would be jumping in, looking at the rates, doing a little bit of the study on that part of it, what you think it might take. And the zoning committee getting together and looking at this map and seeing what we can clear up.
Well, I think we gotta be a little bit careful about annexing too, cause we can get a whole bunch of stuff going if you get annexing this and that and everything else, because you're gonna end up with streets and everything else.
That's why we gotta look at a map. And I think, again, I don't think the annexing
I
is
think-
just cleaning up boundaries. I don't
Personally,
see
I
that we
think
want
it's
to.
up to us to come up with some kind of a plan or start working on it. Of what we're gonna do. And another thing, I think, we need to be able to say why we come up with these figures, why we're gonna raise it this much. Where did you get these figures from? Did you get them from some authority, or did you get them off the light fixture, or where? Cause that question's gonna come up, and I don't wanna be answering it.
And you do have to have answers for
What?
we do have to have answers for what
Well,
we're doing.
we hired somebody to make for the surcharges, to do that, to answer for it. I certainly don't know. I don't know how much we're spending on water main breaks and all that kind of stuff without doing a whole bunch of research on it. And I think it should be fair. Another thing that I think there should be a differential on this deal, whether you got sewer or not.
yeah, I don't have a rate in there increase for
If you
those.
look at these, all these places down here, that's on these sheets, very few of them have sewers. Most of them have got septic tanks, the residents on there.
So can we go with, we'll have the zoning and utility committees meet, and we wanna do like a month from now, do another meeting? 2 months from now, do another meeting? How long do we wanna push this out?
I think we need to have the zoning committee meeting, I think we need the utilities committee meet too. And come up with some recommendations or something where we got something to start with.
Do we wanna check with the engineers and see if they have some, you know, thing that they've done for other towns, that this is what they recommend these other towns, or, you know, without spending a lot of money, or,
I think with the water and sewer, I'd rather go with maps, cause they do, that's what they do, is the rates for water and sewer. The Midwest area, something.
Shayla, don't you have, doesn't your electrical engineer work with other municipalities?
Oh, yeah.
Could you consider splitting the expense with them to get an accurate number? If there's another city that you've talked to that's one of those, hey, get back to me with what you find out, if you share the engineer, could you go in on a study together and split the engineering costs?
I'll just ask them what they would charge us, cause the electric is a lot more involved than the water and sewer.
But that's why I wondered if
Yeah.
other cities are looking for the same answers, if you can split it.
And this is gonna fall into also his 10-year study he's doing, because the electrical is, I mean, is our system capable of taking on more that is not currently, that we don't currently have in the electrical? Water and sewer, we know kind of what our pipe's gonna cost and install. The electric might be a case of, you get too big, we need another substation, that's a huge expense, you know, that type of thing, which we got a long ways to go before we get there, but.
All it takes is one more grain elevator somewhere.
That's on Miller instead of Dakota Energy, so. Anyway, I will make some phone calls and some emails to see what we can get for rates for the utility committee.
And like this surcharge for like what other communities do, like the ones that aren't annexed into Miller. Like if you, it kind of looks to me like this is gonna be kind of a long process. So where do we start? Do we wanna start with the surcharge,
Not surcharge,
or not surcharge, but
rate,
rate?
right,
Yes,
right. Yeah, surcharge is set,
she's already got surcharges.
yeah,
Jack my rates up, why not?
yeah. Yep,
Just to cover some of the cost. And that might not even be an option, but just to start someplace.
well, I do think our utility rates need to be looked at, and I'll see who I can get to do that as cheap as possible, to give us what it's really costing us outside of city limits to provide those services, basically is what I need for a starting point.
make things fair at all.
And the zoning map, I have that as a project, another discussion. SPN is working on they have our zoning map ready for us if we, to change our zoning, to update it, cause it needs to be updated. So that's another work session project that I had on the agenda, but if we do this, it would be kinda nice to put it all in there. There's just a couple places like along Highway 45 that are zoned residential that have a lot of commercial, and it's just kind of random things like that that need to be cleaned up on our current zoning map. That would be nice to throw in with this whole squaring things off and fixing the zoning that we have right now. So,
What's it take to do, change from residential to zoning? It just, the same process of a resolution, and then pass a second resolution, and then 20, 30 days beyond that?
to do the whole zoning map, if we, the current map now, what we can do is we would do an ordinance approving a new zoning map, and on that map, it would have any changes, whether it was from commercial or residential to commercial or vice versa. And we would approve that map, which is, our last map was approved sometime when Tip Sisk was mayor, I don't know when, but it's actually, we've got little colored film that's falling off of it, and all, it was rolled up, it was it's been a long time since we've done a zoning map, and that should be done, which rolls into our comprehensive plan. These projects just keep rolling into
I
my
was gonna say, it's gonna be a great big.
That option
roll.
of doing nothing,
I'm getting like that
man,
one.
that sounds nice. Like that.
We'll just leave this off to the next council and
Yeah.
next finance officer, please.
So we're leaving it at subcommittees are gonna meet to come up with something to,
Look at the map and look at the rates.
okay. So that's a start.
So when do we wanna meet? A month from now is Thanksgiving. Month after that's Christmas.
Month after
You
that,
just
it's
got,
blizzards.
you just got into the two busiest months of the year right now,
Right.
from November on into after Christmas, New Year's.
So do we wanna wait till January to continue this discussion?
Could take us that long to get details and knowing what we're, you
I
know,
think I think the committee should meet, bringing that information back into another work session.
In January.
I agree with that. I think the committee should meet on this and come back for another work session with what they found out.
yeah. So if the committees meet, like sometime, anytime, then in January, we could come back to a,
And can the committees, make a decision with the rates or the annexation to maybe do a survey or something like that? So that when we come to our next work session, we have an idea what the majority wants or what they're thinking and what their comments are before we have our next work session? If a survey is the way to go? At least to send a letter to all of these people? Cause they're not reading our agendas or newspaper or whatever. They're not here anyway.
I think at the very minimum, just put a notice in either with these people's bills or mail directly to them, just to let them know. I don't know that a survey, if you have them fill the things out and send them back, if you get much, but if we just tell them we're gonna be discussing this, what night it affects them directly.
more of a notification of,
If they don't show up, that tells us it's not a big deal.
yeah.
So if you're the only one here, then
Yeah.
We'll have to go with your decision, huh?
No, I think if you send a letter, if we have another work session and we have some more positive information of what, or I shouldn't say positive, but information,
More solid or,
more solid information, then maybe a letter sent inviting them to the work session. And then we'd have our answers as to why we're doing this. And the information to back it up.
What do you think?
Farm and Home Show's coming up in January too, just throwing that out there.
do you know the date?
Third weekend.
14, 15 maybe?
President's Weekend usually, right?
Yeah, is that Friday, Saturday of that 3-day weekend?
President's Weekend is in February.
Or
President's.
Martin Luther King.
Martin
It's
Luther
that
King,
3-day
sorry.
weekend. It's the Friday, Saturday, that 3-day weekend in January.
Well, we set,
14, 15.
we set up a booth out there. We do get a lot of input at our booth.
Especially
Set up a map and
people know this is coming. I mean, that's, Aaron Stevens is the head honcho. He's who you have to talk to about that, but. Hell of a lot cheaper than postage.
All right. Are we good for tonight?
yeah, I make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
I,
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Motion carried and adjourning at not, 8:56.
Sorry I was late.
No, you didn't miss a whole lot.